Greetings. Thank you all for watching this video. This is basically the added information for Duolingo English test explanation. For the pre-uni session of Resident University, basically in the offline session, I might not have covered all of the general knowledge that you need to know regarding Duolingo English test. Um, but Duolingo English test itself is very important. Thus, I want to convey a little bit of information, a little bit more of information regarding the question types, the examples, the perhaps a bit of strategies in actually finishing the test themselves. So yes, I would like to go through all of them. First is the general knowledge for Duolingo English test. It is an adaptive online English test that is currently used by many worldwide universities in the world. Adaptive meaning that it's basically judging your score or adding and increasing the difficulties of your questions based on the correct answers that you got. For example, if you correctly answer a lot of the questions being served, then you might get harder and harder questions. But that's fine because that will be added to your score, and of course, the harder it gets, the higher the score. And it is like IELTS or TOEFL. It's basically the same type. It's to measure your English abilities in four categories, specifically speaking, writing, listening, and reading. The many functions of DET, these are four, actually no, these are five functions of DET, but the other functions are not limited just in these five things. First is as an entrance exams to many worldwide universities around the world, just like IELTS or TOEFL, but of course it is easier to access and it's more accessible. It's also cheaper, and then it's accepted in multiple international companies for measuring applicants' proficiency in English. Maybe some companies around the world these days have already used English testing measurement to actually um, help decide whether these applicants are worth it for the company or not. For example, if you're working in a lot of multinational companies, specifically regarding the international relations or political science and stuff like that, so you might want to have higher Duolingo English test score. And then, of course, the most probably the most notable one in President University it is that it's one of the qualifying tests for ISMA or International Indonesian International Student Mobility Award. It is basically the scholarship program given by the Ministry of Education and Culture in Indonesia, which um, will be able to give you an experience of actually studying abroad. And one of the most important categories that you must pass through in order to acquire this ISMA award is by having a high Duolingo English test score. And then of course it can also add to your CV, and you can measure your English level by just seeing the score. Next is the general knowledge. The scoring is around the range of 10 until 160. And I think for me personally, the high scores are around 130 to 160. That's where you want to secure your position at. 125 is already very good, but if you're aiming for ISMA, I suggest you have to go higher than 130, or maybe if it's like ISMA in the US or Canada or Europe, you might want to have around 130, 140 in your minimum requirement for the score. The subscores are literary, literacy, production, comprehension, and conversation, which we will discuss next. And then practice. Duolingo has their own practicing platform that can predict your score. You can take it as many as you want, but it's only like half of the actual length of the test. It is available in the official website of Duolingo English Test. You can find it easily. And there are also other platforms that can help you improve the strategies and let you practice for the real test, which is that Ready, Data Hub, and Duolingo, the application Duolingo in your mobile phones. You need to also practice a lot to achieve a higher score. That's logical. And then the length of the test, the real test, is 1 hour. The software itself is pretty fragile and it can detect when you're cheating or staring at other things beside the screen of your laptop, and then it can also detect noise or sounds that are being produced in your surroundings, um, and it can actually let you fail if that's the case. So their cheating softwares are very complex. You need to study a little bit more about that. The price for purchasing the test itself is around 750,000 rupiah. It's in dollars, and you can pay it with using credit cards or debit cards or Mastercards, things like that. And the expiration date, I guess, is 2 years. So you can, so the score is invalid in 2 years, in but the track record is not um invalid. The track record will always be there and it can always be in your CV, but you have to put the period of your the period of date when you actually took the test. Next is the subscore. The subscore, there are four of them. These will be the things that will determine your scores. First is the literacy or the ability to read and write. Basically, a lot of the question types in this subscore will require you to type or write basically fast and correctly by describing images or telling a story based on a prompt or um, basically deducing and seeing which words are real English words and which are not. And then production is the ability to write and speak. So basically, this is almost the same like literacy with the added um, scoring of speaking. So production is basically how you convey a story, how's the structure of your answers, how's your fluency in actually answering the questions. So that's the score. Next is comprehension, the ability to read and listen. So basically, in a lot of the interactive question types, you will be given a set of questions that are in the realm of, like, say, storytelling questions, or things like dialogue questions, and you have to respond based on the given dialogues and so on. So those are comprehension, and then conversation is basically the ability to listen and speak. This will require you to describe a lot of things verbally, like describing an image, describing uh, an experience based on a problem. It's almost like the literacy section, but it's basically more speaking than writing. Next is the overview. So I have already put a slide on, but actually I will actually give you a more vivid and detailed explanation about the question types. First is the tips, the general tips. This is important. There are some good strategies and habits that apply to all of the question types on the DET. And first, in the writing sections, you have to use American spelling uh, for basically the fill in the blanks. But for the storytelling question types, you can use both American and British spelling. So yeah, in read and complete, you have to use American only. And then speak loudly, clearly, and you have to use logical structures like begin in introduction and then explain in detail and then add conclusion in the last bit of your answer. And the first of the question types would be read and complete. It will look like this. It's basically like TTS. Um, if you play the TTS game a lot in newspapers or in mobile phones, it's basically like that. So there will be blank letters and there will be added letters. You have to fill in the blanks, and based on the context, you will gain scores. And the time limit is 3 minutes. The skill measures is these two subscores. Next is, oh yeah, by the way, you can access um, the website for Duolingo English test and get to prepare. There will be the full explanation of the question types and the tips. Next is read and select. You select the real English words. Like, for example, regret is a real English word, but Bionic is not. So you have to press on regret. You have to avoid panic, and then you have to press signature because it's a real English word. Unfold is not a real English word. Deal is, corner is. So you have to select the real English words, and you have to have a lot of literacy skills in order to actually answer these questions perfectly. Next, oh yeah, the time limit for that is only 1 minute, but it's pretty quick to click and see. Next is listen and type. So basically, the test will put a recording of someone speaking about something, and it's basically 1 until 3 sentences, and you have to type the statement that you hear. Basically, just repeating what the audio says, um, but with typing, basically. The time is 1 minute. Next is read aloud. This is almost the same, but you have to read it first and then you speak it aloud, and then the test will record your voice and detect whether you spell things correctly or not. What does he look like? These are the easier examples. It will get harder, of course, but I suggest you practice your pronunciations to actually accomplish this test um, with a maximum score. The time is only 20 seconds. It can actually range from 20 until 40 seconds because sometimes the sentences are longer. So yeah, and then write about the photo. This is basically a writing section. You have to describe the image. I suggest you begin with introduction. For example, this image depicts a little girl in her bed, and then you start explaining about the setting, explaining about the objects, explaining about the expression, and the um the overall vibe, I guess, of the picture is also fine, and then you end it in a conclusive manner. You might add, there's a doll in this side. These sheets of the bed are red, perhaps conveying a little bit of harmony for the kid to play with, and so on. And then speak about the photo is basically the same thing as before, but it's you saying it verbally. So you have to describe it, you have to introduce the image, and then you have to describe the image, the actions being taken by the subject in the image, the mood of the image, the setting, and so on. And you have to do it in about 90 seconds. I suggest you actually maximize your time if you want to practice doing it with your friend. It's also a great way of doing it because you can give each other feedbacks. Next is read and write. So basically, there's a prompt in the left side of the screen. You have to type in for as many sentences as you can regarding a topic, regarding an opinion, regarding basically everything. Sometimes you have to tell about your personal experience on something. You have to tell perhaps about your opinion on something, subjects in the realm of science, of social, of politics, of knowledge, and so on. So you have to type in as many things as possible in the test. For example, artists and scientists both benefit society. Compare the contributions of artists and scientists. Which type of contribution you think is valued more in your culture? Give examples. There are no right and wrong answers. There are only answers that are logical and answers that are not logical because they are not, um, they have no connection to the prompt itself. So I suggest you practice your storytelling skills, practice with your friends, practice just writing random things based on your observation and so on. So yeah. Next is read then speak. Same thing, but verbally. There's a prompt, and you have to speak it out loud, but it's with a lesser time limit. Uh, if the read then write section is allowing you for 3 until 5 minutes for you to answer, so you can have as many answers as possible. This one allows you on only for 30 until 90 seconds. So you have to really convey information fast if you have a lot of stories to tell based on these prompts. So talk about your favorite restaurant. Where is it? What type of food does it serve? How often do you go there? Why is it your favorite? You have to speak of it in a humanly manner. Don't be so robotic. Don't be so um, formal, but also don't be very rude or crude, or don't use slangs and things like that. But just speak normally. Is my suggestion. Next is listen then speak. Basically, you have to speak about a topic for around 90 seconds. based on a prompt that is given to you by audio. So this is basically the same thing as this, but the prompt is not written, the prompt is read by a person, by a recording basically. And you can play it, the recording of the prompt 3 times, and then you have to continue and answer your piece verbally around 90 seconds. Next is complete the sentences. So basically this is almost the same as the first question type. However, it's like basically multiple choices, and it's like the normal English question types in your high school and so on. Next is complete the passage, same thing, but you have to put or select actually. You have to select the most fitting context or sentence to fill in the blanks here. This is basically, of course, another example of a literacy and comprehension production subscores, and you have to do it for around 7 until 8 minutes for the entire section, not for one question, but for the entire section. So if you want a clear example of this, I suggest you take the practice test in the ET itself, in the official website, or in the practicing websites that other amateur teachers use to publish in the internet. And then highlight the answer. This is basically you selecting which is the main idea of the paragraph, which is the main idea of the story. You have to highlight it by basically just clicking and dragging your cursor in the sentences that you want to highlight. Next is identify the idea. Basically the same thing. This is still like a storytelling based question. So select the idea that is expressed in the passage. You have to convey the feeling of the passage. Sometimes the passage can be political or social or science or in the realm of like personal experiences and stuff like that. So yeah. Next is title the passage. So you have to use logic and acquire the title for the passage. So you have to read all of this, and then you have to pick the most logical title for the story itself. Next is listen and respond. This is a new question type. So basically, the test will play you a recording of a dialogue based on you and another person. So if this person is saying something, you have to respond based on his or her question, or not really question, but dialogue, which is the most logical, and then it will go back and forth, and at the end of the day, you will have to summarize it. This is basically the same interconnected question type as this one, but this one you have to complete the dialogues first, and then after the dialogue is wholly completed, you can get into this section and summarize the the question types, the dialogue, sorry, the dialogue that you've just undergone in 75 seconds. So you can write anything here based on the dialogue that you've just gone through. Writing sample is another question type. So this is basically almost the same as before, but it's prolonged. Why? Because you have to put in your opinion, you have to put in some general knowledge about this stuff, about the prompt, and you have to write as many things as you can. There's only one question like this in the test, so it will not really um, it will not really suspend and prolong your test that long. And then speaking sample is basically speak about the topic below for 3 minutes. It's also a pretty long verbal section. Based on the written prompt here, you have to say your opinion, your experience, um, your general knowledge over the stuff, your description over the stuff for around 3 minutes. And I suggest you actually take as long as you want before the 3 minutes timestamp, because you want to get as many contents as possible to the to be scored, and that will increase your score. And that's the last one. So that would be all for my explanation of Duolingo English test. If you want to know more, please enter the website for Duolingo English test. Please watch YouTube channels discussing what Duolingo English test. I suggest you watch Teacher Luke in YouTube. He's actually a very good teacher regarding that breakdown of Duolingo English test itself. do a lot of practice, do a lot of discussions, do a lot of basically just you verbally speaking and describing what things randomly. That also help. And yeah, just read a lot of tips regarding this Duolingo English test. So that would be all. Thank you very much for tuning in and see you next time.